Hello, everyone. Welcome to Babbling about Bridgerton, another episode and series of Morgan Hasn't Seen TV. I'm looking forward to this an awful lot. We're doing this in honor of the soon-to-be upcoming third season of Bridgerton.
Yes.
We're starting. You've finally got me on board to watching this strikingly popular television show
Yes.
that people can't really get enough of, can they? I don't think over the last few years. And we don't have that much to catch up on. So in the next few weeks, today obviously we're talking about all of season 1 of
Yes.
Bridgerton. Next week will be all of season 2, and the week after will be all of the spin-off Queen Charlotte.
Yes.
Before it's time to talk about at least the first half of season 3 itself, which I believe drops on Netflix on May the 16th. There we go.
Yes. Yes.
That's why we're doing it. That's why we're here. It's exciting. Did I get into Bridgerton? Did you even think I would get into Bridgerton, Janine? What did you think I would make of it all?
Well, I know you like history, despite the show
Yes.
not being like historically accurate. I think you would have enjoyed the vibes of it. Also kind of the interesting things that it does with the show. Particularly, I think generally adapting something that came from a book visually, the show took the extra step to do something really interesting with it, with the diverse casting, particularly in this time period. It's not something you see in this time period. So to see a whole mix of different races of people in this Regency era is really fun, I think. Um, it's also very provocative and sexy, and so it didn't shy
It's very
away.
provocative, yes.
Yes, and so it didn't shy away from those elements that are in the books. This is
Steamy.
based off of a yes, so this is based off a book series by Julia Quinn, follows the Bridgerton family, and each books follows the romantic story of one of the Bridgerton, children.
Yeah, which
Um,
is where the show falls in line with it. That is how the
yeah.
show is kind of structured outright. But did you say then that the books don't have the diversity of race that the show has? Is that a show
Um
thing?
I've only read 1 book because I'm just so excited for this 3rd season, so I've only read the book about the 3rd season from what I
Okay.
understand it, I don't know that this kind of race idea is really a thing in the book because the queen is
Okay.
a very prevalent character. Queen Charlotte is a very prevalent character in the show, and she's not in the books, from my understanding. She's not
Okay.
referenced in the book series. And the queen being a Black woman is
Yeah,
what
that's kind of
has
why.
yes, is why this world is so diverse. So it is something it's not just like a colorblind kind of casting situation, like think of
Okay.
Roger and Hammerstein's Cinderella, like race is not addressed, everyone is just all different colors or whatever. Um, but this is actually something that is part of the story of this version of Bridgerton. So because the book doesn't have a queen like that in the story, I wouldn't expect it to really address race in that way or have
Yeah.
different characters like that because even names are changed. Like next season, we're going to get some Indian characters, and I think in the book their surname is Sheffield, but in the show their name's going to be Sharma, a more Indian
Okay.
name. So I definitely think this cultural thing is a product of what the show was wanting to do. So because I think it just depicts a very specific era in history, um, I thought you would be able to kind of get into that, especially being a British person. So
Yeah, I mean,
you
look,
know,
you say that it's strange because you say that, you're not sure whether I would like it, being that I like history, but because it's not strictly historically accurate, that's not a be all and end all of anything.
yeah,
And
yeah,
in an odd way, I find it actually really quite historically accurate. I know it's obviously a very fictional thing and a very
yeah,
fictitious thing. Let's put aside the fact that there is actually a significant amount or a significant population, however somewhat forgotten to history it is, of black Georgian people in Britain who, around in the
Yeah.
Georgian time, the Regency time, whatever you want to refer to it as. So maybe that direct casting isn't as out of the realms of possibility as it
That people
actually
think.
was.
Okay.
I just think it's a little bit of an unfortunate, forgotten aspect of a
Yeah.
certain time in British and European history, which, to be honest, I'm not far from any expert on, but certainly want to get more of. And admittedly, watching Bridgerton has kind of thrown me into learning more about the period itself. But I find it actually really rather accurate, given that the entire pretext of Bridgerton is all about being prim and proper and
Yeah,
keeping
the
up appearances.
propriety of the time and
The
gossip
the
being something that could ruin a whole family and kind of things like
all
that.
of it.
Yeah.
It's all very much manipulating social situations for the benefit of you, yourself, and only you, no matter what the hell you do to get there, no matter who you
Yeah.
stand on to get there, which is so this class of nobility of this time. I can't help but think Bridgerton's actually really quite historically accurate in terms of tone and character atmosphere.
Okay.
The story can be whatever the story wants to be, but that's what's important to me, I think, when it comes to this concept of historical accuracy. So I really enjoy it for that, because I think it's a beautiful to look at show. It's bright,
Yes,
it's
like the
poppy.
locations really bright. You seeing these kind of stately homes and these balls and the gowns and the
Yeah.
dress and everything like that is really great to look at. Definitely. And then we're also just working with these really gray characters. You said the
Mm.
importance of propriety and prim and proper, and rumors and gossip could really ruin a person, but you have these great characters who have complicated feelings and complicated ways of handling situations that could really severely affect the future of somebody. So that also just makes it really interesting to watch such complex characters in such a restrictive kind of society.
Yeah, it makes the whole thing 17 times more interesting when you're not just immediately envisioning one person doing a certain thing. Okay,
Yeah.
story wise, you might know where ultimately it's going to go. I don't think there's any necessary surprises with storylines
Yeah.
that happen, or at least the very major storylines, because ultimately it's a historical romance story. They
Yes, and I mean,
always go the same
the
kind
same
of
way you
way,
think they're
don't
gonna go.
they?
Yes, and I mean,
It's
another
the
one of my thoughts.
specific Yeah, it's the specific character details where the surprises come, which I like.
Yeah. And one of my thoughts was also, okay, is he going to think this is a little too soapy? Because I mean, on the surface, you could write this show off as just a sexy, soapy kind of soap opera show. But the fact that we are dealing with such interesting characters, and I think the romances are really well played out and take their time, because you're following the focus is this love story through the course of a season. Um, you get to see those relationships bloom in really interesting ways, and they do devote a lot of time to all of the really important subplots as well. So while it can be soapy feeling on the surface, you're dealing with really interesting, likable or unlikable characters, really dealing
Yeah.
with complex ideas and emotions. So
I
I
I I'd
definitely think it elevates it in a way.
I'd sooner use the term melodramatic and
Yeah.
melodrama, because that's kind of the soapiness done in a quality way
Yeah.
becomes melodrama.
Yeah.
And that's what this is. Because it's performed really well, it's produced really well, it looks really well, and it's written really well,
Yeah.
then it can't be soapy.
Yeah.
Soapy to me just conjures up images of cheap acting and cheap
Yeah.
sets and daytime
Yeah.
television.
Yeah.
which this is not. This is prestige television, really, isn't it?
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
prestige popular, yes, mainstream, but real quality produced television.
Yes.
So it can have its melodramatic elements. I like melodramatic elements in this, especially when it's romantic melodrama. I
Yes.
can just get myself right on into it, really latch on to certain feelings and certain emotions that the show is giving me, which I very much found in this, and we'll get into some of the details pretty soon here. But I found myself getting hooked quickly, which is a good thing.
Oh, good. Okay.
Um, and not just because you're watching pretty people do pretty fancy things all the
Yeah.
time, because
Yeah.
that is what you're doing, and sometimes that can be nice. But for a lot of people, that is off-putting in certain circumstances,
Yeah.
isn't it? People don't like to watch, you know, fancy, pretty people doing fancy, pretty things, but
Yeah.
sometimes it's actually quite nice and it's escapist in that way
Yes, it's very
to go and do that.
escapism. Yeah. Yeah.
Should we talk about some of the major storylines of
Yes. Yes.
the first season of Bridgerton? Because it deals with a lot of stuff, really.
Yes. So the first season is like the book series. We're following Daphne. I believe she
Daphne
is.
Bridgerton.
Yes. And so the story is The Duke and I. That's the book that it's based on. And if you ever need to kind of remember the order of the Bridgerton siblings, they are actually named alphabetically. So you know who the oldest to the
Yeah.
youngest is. So Daphne's the fourth in line, and so we open with this whole for her story. It's her season, her coming out season. That's a big deal every season. You go before the queen, she looks you over, and she'll deem whoever she thinks is the diamond of the season, the one to look out for in her suitors and her courting, and will get kind of a lot of attention from male suitors trying to get at her. So she is deemed the diamond of the season, and so we follow her and her story as she meets the Duke of Hastings,
Mm.
and how their whole relationship transpires. So that's kind of the main focus of this first season.
Now, I've been to Hastings. I don't remember seeing any fancy estate, but that's beside the point. I'm sure there was a Duke of Hastings. Probably
Yeah.
still is a Duke of Hastings.
Yes.
Um, that is the central romance of the whole series, the
Yeah.
whole season. That is the central plot line of the whole season, and it does have its troubles, doesn't it? And I mean, its character troubles. I think it's a
Yeah.
wonderful romance plot. I really do. You're dealing with the Duke. This is where Reggie John Page comes from, even though apparently he doesn't want to remember that he comes from there anymore.
Yes, I think it's a big
I mean, it's not where he
contention with
comes
fans.
from, is it? Okay,
No,
it's
but I
not where
think
he comes from.
that's what got him very well known, and so I think it comes with a little contention from fans as to, like, "Why didn't you come back? Like, this show made your career, and now it doesn't seem like you're doing much that we can see, so why didn't you come back?" kind of thing. I think I saw something, he didn't wanna be pigeonholed or stereotyped or kind of become this, like, hunky heartthrob guy kind of thing. He wanted to do
But he's good
more.
at it, though.
Yeah, he's great, and this character has some substance. He has a really difficult plot point in his whole story, is that his father was awful to him. His
Yeah.
father kept pushing his mother to have an heir, a son, and she was constantly failing him, so he felt like his wife was a disappointment until his wife finally gave him a son, but she died during childbirth. And he grew up with a stutter, but he was very smart. But because he couldn't talk very eloquently, his father completely dismissed him as an idiot, would hit him or, threaten to hit him, call him names, sent him away, never wanted to see him because he just couldn't speak well. So he grew up hating his father. Ultimately, he comes of age. He becomes a strapping, young, intelligent man. Um, And as his father is lying on his deathbed, his father's like, "I'm so glad the line of Hastings will continue with you," because that's all the father cares about, is that their family line continuing. So on his father's deathbed, to get revenge on him for how he treated him all his life, he says, "No, the line will die with me. I'm never gonna get married. I'm never gonna have any children. So F you." Uh,
Yeah.
and as his father dies. So that's kind of this vow he's made to his father, to himself, that he is never going to marry or have kids, as a payback to his terrible father. So that's where we meet him,
Yeah,
with
and
this kind of, yeah.
it is the major conflict point of the romance of the whole season,
Yeah.
is his own insistence on not carrying on his father's line. Because admittedly, we're talking about the fact that there's a lot of grey characters in Bridgerton, and there are, it's what makes
Yeah.
the show interesting. Really, really rather interesting. If there's one person that's genuinely just wholly evil, it is the former Duke of Hastings, Simon's
Yeah.
father, who is
Yes, he's
just
absolutely
pure
terrible.
nasty, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but Simon himself, Reggie John Page, is very, very likable. He's got his troubles and he's got his stubbornness that
Yeah.
comes to be a problem as we go through the season. But he's very, very likable. I like that we start the romance with them, him and Daphne getting on like a house on fire, becoming really good friends, putting this ruse on to try and fool the gossip columnist of the town,
Yes.
Lady Whistledown,
Yes.
who
Um,
I will put our names back on the
yes.
screen because I'm Lord Whistleуp today, who is
Her
Lady
counterpart, her
Whistledown's
hidden, yes.
counterpart. Yes, that's right.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, they decide to have this arrangement with each other, very much feeling like some rom-com element. She is getting pursued by a really kind of deplorable suitor. Um,
Yeah,
and
right at the beginning, she is. Yeah, she goes through a few. I mean, this terrible guy at the beginning, who we
yeah.
do literally just want to see thrown into a large body of
Yes,
water
he's
somewhere.
he's he's disgusting, and we have another new girl in town who is also granting a lot of attention. So,
Yeah,
she needs to kind of widen her market on getting more suitors' attention. He is a kind of new handsome man in town. He's in town to handle, his father's estate as his father has passed away, so that's why he's there. So they make this arrangement. If we act like we're courting, a duke wanting to court me will get me the attention of other suitors and, up my status. And if ladies think I'm courting you, they'll leave you alone. All the mamas who are trying to get their daughters married off, they'll leave you alone
yes,
because they'll think you're courting me. So that's how they come about this arrangement. And as they're going through this whole arrangement, they do become really good friends, and he
yeah.
becomes really protective of her, and ultimately that leads to them falling in love with each other. But it's very
Obviously,
complicated, because it's not
it
only
is
that it's
complicated.
not, yeah,
It
and
is
it's not,
complicated,
yeah, and
but
it's not that he just can't be with her once he realizes he loves her. He knows that her dream is to be a mother and have a family, because she comes from this large family who she loves and she's very close with. And her dream is to be a mother. And so he knows he can't give that to her. So he ultimately tries to fight those feelings. And then she's very
yeah,
confused as to why he's fighting those feelings, because, you know, why wouldn't he, if we seem to care about each other, and she sees them as friends as well. So then it's like her trying to understand why he's being so distant and cold to her at a certain point in their relationship.
yeah. Mid-season, we get
Yeah.
the introduction of the prince as well, the
Yeah.
Prince of Prussia,
Yeah.
who comes, Prince Friedrich,
Yes.
um, who seems, as you get this kind of type of character in all these kind of romantic stories that are ultimately about two people, and then the third person comes in who's really, really good for them. It's
Yeah.
literally Casablanca, right? Think of
Yes.
Bogart and Bergman, but then Paul Henreid's there as well, who's
Yes,
just
and
really
he's
good,
great.
and
Yeah.
really he's the right one. And we all know that reasonably everything says sensible, go and get with Paul Henreid, a la the Prince of
Yes.
Prussia
And of
in this
course
show.
yes,
But
and of
that
course
never
my
happens, does it?
no,
We want the
no.
more emotional, love conquers all story,
Yes,
not
yes.
the sensible
Not
option.
the
We
sensible one.
always
And
get that kind of
of course, your classic, interpretation, my modern interpretation would be something like Sweet Home Alabama. She has this perfect Patrick Dempsey character, but she wants to go back with her hometown, Josh Lucas kinda thing. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I like the kind of definitely, obviously, romantic element playing into what we see in romantic films all the time and really creating this great conflict with the characters, which also leads to this kind of gray miscommunication between the two of them.
Mm,
Because once and also this Prince of Prussia is the nephew to the queen, and the queen rules all. She wants to be the
yeah.
proponent of everything good that happens. She, dubbed Daphne the diamond of the season. So she wants to see my choice for the shining uh debutante of the season who's going to have this big wedding. I want to be the known matchmaker for this perfect match. And if she matches with my nephew, then I'll also be able to take credit for that in that way. It'll be a triumph
The
for the
Queen's
queen.
great. I
Yes.
really like the Queen as a character. I'm looking forward to the Queen Charlotte spin-off show to
Yes.
learn more about her kind of upbringing and why she is the way she is, because she's
Yes.
very, very interesting. She is quite a likable character as well, but
Yes, and we
clearly,
do
obviously,
bounce
does
back.
have we do
Mhm.
and clearly
Yeah.
do have her, but she clearly does have her troubles. As we
Y
say, we even get
yes.
the odd one or two scenes of her with the actual King George III
Yeah.
in the show, who is beginning or quite a way into his, shall we say, madness that we all like to
Yes.
call it.
So Queen Charlotte definitely will go into that, and we also in Queen Charlotte, we bounce back from in time. So we'll see the young her, and we'll
Yeah.
also go to the future and see the her that we see in this version of the show as well. So
Okay.
I'm excited for you to get to know her when we get there. But yeah,
Yeah.
she is very much wanting to be the proponent of the biggest match of the season. But here comes in Lady Whistledown to undermine that. Talking about this new girl who's come to town, Marina, who is kind of stealing Daphne's shine, and maybe the queen didn't choose right for the diamond of the season, and kind of undermining the queen's authority in a lot of ways with her gossip column.
Yeah, and
So,
Marina's staying with
the
her cousins,
Featheringtons.
who are the Featheringtons.
Yes, they
And
live
now
across from the
I
Bridgertons.
I
Penelope,
thought
the
it was
youngest daughter, is
going to
best
be,
friends with the Bridgerton daughter, Eloise.
yeah.
And here comes, yeah, Marina.
From my understanding of Bridgerton before I watched Bridgerton, I thought there was a family rivalry. Now, there's not
Oh,
really a family
no,
rivalry, is there? They're just kind of neighbours, one family of which is quite nice, one family of which really isn't that nice.
well,
I think
the
the
majority of the
Bridgertons,
yeah.
majority, the Bridgertons are better than they are worse, and I think majority the Featheringtons are worse than they are better.
Yes, generally. And poor Penelope, the youngest daughter of these three sisters, her mother puts her in these awful garishly bright colors. She's a full-figured girl, very dismissed by everyone, seen as this wallflower character. So she has her
Yeah.
coming out season, but her mom really has no hope for her, and her mom is very much a schemer in her own right. Her father is kind of secretly gambling their money away. So
Lord
that's kind of
Featherington is,
yes.
he's a criminal, really. Lord Featherington is a
Yeah.
horrible person.
Yes.
He's a secret keeper of the worst kind.
Yes. And that's the whole reason
He's
why
wasteful, he's an idiot.
Yes, and that's
And
the whole reason
yes,
why
okay,
Marina
something rather
comes to stay.
nasty happens to him at the season's end. Sure, something rather nasty happens to him, but he brings it on himself, doesn't he? I
He
have
does.
little
He
sympathy
doesn't
for
learn.
Lord Featherington.
No, even when he breaks down in tears, very pathetically. Um, yeah, Marina is we learn is there because she because Lord Featherington owed her father a debt. So sends Marina there to live with the Featheringtons, and she's very beautiful. And so Lady Featherington is very worried that this beautiful girl is going to take the shine away from her daughters getting any suitors, because the daughters feel very much like Cinderella stepsisters, just kind of goofy and bungling and ridiculous.
But they never get out of that phase, really, do they? Like, even when there is a little bit of romance for the
For one of
Featherington
them, yeah.
girl, the one Featherington
Yeah.
girl, they never really get out of the put them on the side, as you say, Cinderella stepsister vibe, which they kind of are. They're not like Cinderella, horrible, evil, ugly, nasty stepsister, but they're just a bit dim. They're a bit like
Yeah, but
nothing.
they also, they pick on Penelope, so it just plays into Penelope as a character really
Well,
being
that's true, yeah.
overlooked and picked on, not just by her mother, but by her sisters as well. So she is kind of the standout as probably the kindest person in that family.
I mean, that
Um,
is true, and we get a lot of her friendship with perhaps the most interesting of the Bridgerton girls, Eloise Bridgerton, who's very much the
Outspoken and
Jo
hates
Jo March
society.
from Little Women kind of
Yes, she hates
attitude.
the idea of marriage, and she, sees it as like servitude, and she's very much an independent kind of thinker. A lot of people find Eloise's character a bit annoying, and kind of judge the dynamic of that friendship, which you'll see more of going forward. The fact that, like, but she never really asks Penelope what's going on with her, or seems really to listen to Penelope. It's just kind of her listening to herself talk about the state of society and this and that and the other. So,
Look, I can understand perhaps why people would find it annoying, but I think people get too, I don't know, protective. Even if they don't like characters, they get protective over their own opinions towards certain characters. I think it's particularly easy in a show like this for people to do that with characters because it's such a kind of emotionally investing television show
yeah.
that people just have these very strong opinions of them, will fight to the death over their opinions of these, uh, you know, uh, uh, various different characters. And yes, okay, I can understand Eloise being a little bit annoying, but also how old is she supposed to be? 15, 16?
Yeah, they're around 16.
Why? Surely the interest of a character being like that in this world, taking her own step, doing something totally original in her, obviously in her own mind, she is unlike anybody else in her life that she sees from day to day. She
Yeah.
spends all season trying to figure out the mystery of who Lady Whistledown is. Now, I thought Lady Whistledown was just Julie Andrews, and I was expecting at some point during the season for Julie Andrews herself to pop up somewhere, even if nobody in the characters knew it was whoever Julie Andrews was playing, whether she was called Lady
Yeah.
Whistledown or not, just to find out she's actually just the narrator of Lady Whistledown.
Yes, yes.
Oh, boo,
She's the
boo a little
audible.
morsel.
She's the audible voice, but I mean, does the reveal of the real Lady Whistledown not save that situation for you?
Yes, it does, and I like that we end the season
Yeah.
with that, and I mean, it is the last thing we get of the whole season because it has been such this mystery. I mean, not only Eloise, who's been going after it, the Queen is desperate to know who
Yes,
Lady
because
Whistledown
who's
is because of the
undermining her like this?
influence.
Yeah.
Yeah, the influence, the undermining aspect, yeah, but the heavy influence that this unknown person has,
Yeah.
who is Lady Whistledown. It's a real key point, I think alongside the actual main romance story
Yeah.
of the Duke and Daphne, it's the other key plot line of the whole show, or
Yes.
at this point, the whole season. So, okay, the reveal at the very end that I don't think we need to say spoilers anymore,
Yeah.
that it's Penelope of all
Yes, the
people.
wallflower.
That,
She's always at the parties. She gets to hear all the gossip. She's overlooked, so people don't even notice her or think about her. So they do a really good job of setting up her as a character and how she exists in this world and how that works perfectly for
yeah,
her to be Lady Whistledown. And like for me rewatching it, I kind of look back and see all of the moments and see kind of where they place Penelope, and I think Nicola Coughlin, her ask was for them to make sure to pepper in putting a quick glimpse of Penelope in certain places at certain events, so it would make
yeah,
sense to the big reveal that we get by the end. So
yeah. When key conversations are happening between people that you think only
yes,
those two people could possibly know, but
but how
somehow,
did she
somewhere,
know? Yes,
Penelope's
how does Lady Whistledown know?
over
So
here.
yes. So, I think that also plays into what I'm seeing now. I don't know if it was a thing at the time, but combining that with things that will happen later, people may be disliking Penelope for what she does to Colin in this season, what she does to Colin and Marina. So that is another big storyline that we're following in this first season is
Yeah,
Colin and Penelope or Colin and Marina. Um, Colin, him being the third Bridgerton sibling, very kind of young and adventurous and kind of a bit of a flirt. And Penelope having this long-standing crush on him. She's been in love with him for her whole, since she's met him. And she's best friends with his sister. So we see several moments where Colin goes to talk to her, joke with her. He'll see people bully her, and so he'll take her out to the dance floor and dance with her, and really just be kind of protective and friendly to her.
yeah.
But
You
very
can
much
see why the
she likes.
infatuation is there on her
Yes,
part.
and you can see he genuinely cares about her, but um, not to the degree that probably even he realizes, because that's kind of the the setup of their love story. That is what we're going to see in season 3. That
I
he
see.
maybe loved her all along, but he just wasn't aware of it. Because you'll see scenes where he makes a beeline straight for her. He'll go talk to her. Like when somebody is spouting some ridiculous sonnet and him and her kind of just sharing a glance at like, this guy's ridiculous. He goes
Yeah,
straight to her to hear what she has to say about it and has a little joking moment with her and things like that. So they pepper in a lot of scenes where he is, going straight to her because he wants to know what she has to say or think. And also, he listens to her. If you can kind of compare his friendship with her friendship with Eloise to her friendship with Colin. Colin always seems a lot more engaged and interested in what she's saying and really is looking at her and listening to her and things like that. So, um, yeah, I think you can understand why she would have these feelings for him and how that could blossom in this new upcoming season if you're
yeah.
really kind of
And
looking for it. So when this
look,
Marina character comes in, she's beautiful, she's everything Penelope doesn't think she is. Before Colin even gets involved with Marina, she is the one family member to be kind to Marina and really befriend her. And Marina reveals to her a lot of things that will ultimately play into that Colin situation going forward.
yeah, I mean, Marina is in love with a soldier fighting in Spain called George.
Yes.
She is with child.
Yes,
Um,
which is a
but
big
it's
conflict. Yeah.
yeah, but it's kind of a secret with child. Like we're trying to pretend she's not, and everybody's trying to
Yes.
kind of
So
hide it because it's not. It's not. It would be absolutely. It'd be an enormous scandal for this unwed young thing that Lady Whistledown will probably use the term to be wandering around the society with protruding belly or other such words like that.
Yes, well,
The
that
language used in Bridgerton is very beautiful, I think.
timely, yes. Um, so she is holding out hope that, George will come back for her, and so she's not really opening herself up to any suitors until, scheming Lady Featherington, realizes this. She realizes that this girl's pregnant because she hasn't had her courses, uh,
Oh,
in
who says that as
after
well? It's
after yes, right?
terminology like this in this show, I just love. This is what makes it feel historically accurate to me that I
Yes,
said before.
like, when they're talking about weight, they're saying she's however many stones heavier than whatever, or even with age, like, this person who's 22, they're 2 and 20 kind of thing. I love that kind of language. But yeah, so Lady Featherington realizes that she hasn't had her courses, and so she realizes she's pregnant, and when she learns that Marina is holding out for this George, she forges a letter supposedly from George saying that he's done with her. He doesn't want anything to do
Yeah,
with her or her child, which
really
prompts Marina
nasty.
to then play into a scheme with Lady Featherington to marry her off quickly. And so she can kind of fool whoever she's with that this is their child. And by the time this baby comes, you'll already be married, and you'll just have to kind of be where
Yeah,
you are. Um,
which you think people would notice that sort of stuff happen. But I feel like throughout history and throughout this class level in history, that's happened an awful lot more than you might think it has.
Oh, yes. People out of wedlock, getting together and having children, and
Quick,
and
yeah,
yes, the book even mentions, like, however many times 7-month babies were born, and and things like
yeah.
that. So people
It's
are
like,
fully aware of
but
these
you really
false.
think that, yeah, you really think that 7 month, people that are born, what, 8 weeks early in the early 1800s are
Yeah,
really gonna live a lot of the time. No, it's like, what, 1% chance of
exactly.
that happening?
Yes, but I also love that they put emphasis on these girls' mothers not teaching them about how these things work. It's a big contentious thing between
Yes.
Daphne and her mother, Violet. She gets upset with her mother, who's like, "You did not tell me how this works." Like, and that caused problems in my situation because you sent me out into the world as a fool, not knowing how intercourse even works, how a baby comes about. And even when Penelope finds out that Marina's pregnant, her and Eloise have this whole conversation trying to understand, well, how do you get pregnant if you're not married? Like, they don't even have
Yeah.
any concept of how sex works or anything.
It's
So,
terrible, really. I mean,
yes,
it
it's
it
really
gets
sad.
more serious. It gets more serious in Daphne's case because
Yes.
not only does, obviously, Lady Bridgerton, having not told her anything at all,
Yeah.
um, which, I'm sure is annoying to Daphne given how much she clearly enjoys it because we get an awful lot of it uh, over the course of 2 or 3 episodes in the season.
Yes.
Where I feel like I'm looking at Reggie John Paisley's naked bottom about 17 times.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably maybe why he
Um,
didn't want to come back because his butt was always out. But but,
all the
yeah.
time.
Yes, and so
Well,
the fact that he kind of pulls out every time, she doesn't understand. She doesn't
yeah,
get any what that means. She even asks him, "Does
no,
that
no.
hurt?" Like,
I was
he's
going
like,
to I
"No."
was going to say his pull-out game is rather impressive.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes some skill to do,
Right? Yes.
um, and he's very stubborn with it. I mean, he's
Yeah,
very,
it
very
just speaks
stubborn
to
at
the
doing it.
devotion to this
To
vow.
to
Um,
the point where it does look like it hurts
yeah,
sometimes
so
for
she,
him
like,
to
even has to ask
actually.
him because she doesn't
Yeah,
understand. Um, but yeah, I mean, with Marina, Penelope is very supportive of her and very kind to her. And then when Marina starts kind of scheming with Lady Featherington, because first Lady Featherington tries to marry her off to like a disgusting old man who understands the situation and doesn't care. He just needs a wife. Um,
yeah.
she is like, "Hell no," but Colin finds Marina attractive, so he starts kind of talking to her and trying to court her. So then, Marina makes a deal with Lady Featherington. "Okay, if I can't get Colin to marry me within, like, the next week, then okay, I'll marry this creepy old man." So then she starts falling into the scheme with Lady Featherington to catch a man quickly and maybe even get him to sleep with her so that the baby will feel like it's a legitimate, "Oh, it must be from this person." So then that's when she starts playing into the scheme with Colin. Penelope overhears all of this and she loves Colin. Colin is her friend. She doesn't want to see him manipulated and tied down to wife and child when it's all just a big ruse and scheme. So she does try to talk to Marina and say, "Don't do this to Colin. Why would you, do this to him? He's my friend." And Marina is just so like resolute and kind of cold to her. And you sympathize with Marina in a sense because you understand, she's desperate. She's doing what she thinks is best for her and her child, but also is just kind of cold and how easily she's able to kind of go into the situation and manipulate this person in this way. And she calls out Penelope for her love of Colin and calls her a silly child and he only sees you like a little sister and, says the harsh things to Penelope to get Penelope off her back. And Penelope even tries to go to Colin and say, because Colin ultimately proposes to Marina. And he only proposes to Marina to kind of hook up with her because she tries to get Colin aside and sleep with him so that, all will be okay with the baby situation. Oh, she got pregnant from Colin, but he's a gentleman, so he does not sleep with her, but then he proposes so that they can sleep together. So that's really the only reason he proposes to her. So now, once this engagement is happening, Penelope even tries to go to Colin and warn him and say, "She has these love letters. She's in love with somebody else. I thought you should know." But he's like, "I'm not going to judge her for her past. She loved him before me, but she's marrying me. It'll all be okay, Penelope. Don't worry." And so once the two of them, she tries to talk to them about the situation as Penelope. And when they don't listen to Penelope, she resorts to whistle down. So,
Yeah, whistle down expose,
yes,
which does cause issues for
lots of issues.
Marina and Colin. There's tears, there's crying, there's all sorts of carnage going on.
Yeah, she drinks
It
this
is,
tea trying to get rid of the baby or like
yeah,
kill herself. You
it,
know,
it is, it is the, I suppose you could call it the nastiest thing Lady Whistledown does, particularly when you find out obviously who
who it
Lady
is.
Whistledown actually
Yeah.
is. But it's, and as you've said before, people might not like people, people in not in the movie, not in the show, people being people might not like Penelope because of this, but that is putting an ideal stamp on a character that never wanted to have that ideal stamp put on them.
Yes.
Characters need to be more interesting than that. They need to be deeper than that. That is what we enjoy about characters. We can't just have simple people wandering around all the time. We need
Yes.
complex people. That's what the show excels at doing, and I appreciate it most for doing that. It's why I find Marina to be one of the most interesting characters in the
Yeah.
entire thing, because you said it there. She might have been cold to Penelope, but ultimately, I look at that and I go, that's the society you're living in. She's the one being mature at this point. We've
Yeah,
seen her be a
she's
little
doing what
bit
she needs to do
immature.
for herself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's doing what she needs to do. We've seen her be a little bit immature in earlier parts of the season because holding out hope for George and these
George. Yeah.
letters. It's a little bit idealistic. You forgive it because she's a young woman. She's got these
Yeah.
ideas. We nobody's perfect and all this kind of stuff. But she comes to that realization of this is necessary for the world we live in. It's not
This is what I have to
perfect.
do. Yeah.
Nothing's ever perfect. This is what I have to do. So it's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Sorry, which is understandable. She's really, given the troubles she's been in
Yeah.
all season, that is a really understandable way for her to kind of end almost the season. I really like that. It's a very, very, it's a great show. I think
Yes.
it's a great show for doing all these things. I did want to also bring up Anthony Bridgerton, of course,
Yes.
who's a reasonably major storyline in this movie. I believe he is the center point of season 2 of
Yes,
Bridgerton.
so we get to know him better, of course, in his love story in season 2, but here he has been kind of thrust into being the viscount and the head of his family at the death of his father, and
Now, if
it's
there's
a
one title I would like, it's Viscount.
right? Doesn't it sound cool? And the
I
second book
think
is
it's
actually
the
called The Viscount Who Loved Me is is
let's just think about noble titles for a minute.
yeah,
Obviously, Lord, Duke, Earl, um, King,
yes.
the rest of them. Yes, and all the female counterparts, of course, Queen, Duchess. What
Yes,
I'm never going to be a Duchess, am I?
Viscountess.
That's the point. But Baron, I've always liked
Yeah,
Baron, although you don't really get barons in Britain. That's more of a German thing.
yeah.
Um, but Viscount, it's
Right? It's a good one, it's a good
'cause
one.
probably because it's French. Probably because
Yes.
it sounds fancy.
It sounds
I'm a
very fancy
Viscount.
because I had never heard of Viscount until this show, I don't think.
I don't
So yeah,
understand what they all mean,
right? Like, what the difference is. But yeah,
and I
so his
should.
yeah, right? Fail. But his story is basically him struggling with the duties of leading his family. He's very kind of strict and harsh, and it's a lot of pressure for him. And he's fallen in love with a opera singer, but she is not of the noble society, so he can't actually give her what she wants. And she is starting to get fed up with the fact that he can't be with her or give her what she needs because he has to go chaperone Daphne's suitor situations
Yeah.
and has to, handle the finances of his family and handle all of these situations and put out all of these family fires. So he can't be devoted to her like she wants to be devoted to. So she gets frustrated, and that's kind of the story we're dealing with him. And we'll get more into his struggle with being the viscount and having to take on, managing his family at such a young age at the death of his father in his
Yeah.
season 2. So we'll get to know more about that. But we just see him kind of struggling with
Lordly
that.
duties.
Yes,
We do,
and he is
because he's not the main focus of
no,
this, so it makes
but
sense
they
that we
do
get
build his
a bit more of
story
it.
up a little bit
Yeah,
here.
and he's an interesting character in himself. Again, he's another inclusion of the grayness with everybody, of the fact
Yeah.
he will do very nice things. Ultimately, I think everybody has, or most people have, good intentions in the show.
Yeah.
They just go about them in varying degrees of positivity or not. And
Yes, because
Anthony seems to be one that does everything with a very honourable degree of honour, I suppose. He does
yes.
everything with a lot of honour. Everything wants to be proper. He's never unnecessarily cruel or unnecessarily mean. It's just all about him and the betterment of his own family.
Yes, and I like
Um,
that he pushes
Not
that
just
too
the
far at
betterment of
moments.
him, but the betterment of his own family, which
Yes.
you can't fault that kind of dedication. Again, because he has the man of the house, the lordship thrust upon him
Yeah.
at the young age. You've got to appreciate that about Anthony, I
Yeah.
think, even though he has his tendencies to be a little bit harsh towards the opera singer who just wants a relationship, but he
Yes,
can't.
and
Then
even
leave her then leave her then.
but he can't. He
This is what
can't.
we
He's
say.
making all these promises to her. And also just being very overbearing with his kind of overseeing of Daphne and, promising her to
Yeah,
that nasty man because he's the only one who proposed and he doesn't really have a deplorable kind of background. And he's also scaring suitors away. So he's causing problems for Daphne in terms of her season as well. And he's just making these really harsh choices. So I love that that kind of comes to a head as well, and he has to make peace with Daphne and really listen to her. And she's like, "I don't want to marry him. This is what I want. I feel like you are not taking what I want into consideration." And he has to kind of come to terms with like how he's talking to his sister and realizes I'm sorry, and he makes amends for that. So he can come off at the very beginning of this season as unlikable, but they do give him this arc where he does step back and listen to his sister, and he does learn from the whole relationship that he had with the opera singer, which ultimately ends with her being done with him and fed up with waiting and
Yeah.
moving on to someone else. So he ends this season being heartbroken going into the next season, and still with all of this impending stress of being the Viscount.
Heartbroken, but necessarily so, because he
Seems
need
that,
he needed away from unfortunately, he needed away from the opera singer anyway,
because it was never
because
going to work.
it was never going to work, from either angle.
Yeah.
So it's better, but
Yeah.
yeah, okay, he's gonna be a little bit sad at the start of the
And
next
you
season,
could say
surely.
you can say the same thing about Colin. He needed to get his heart broken as
Course.
well. And like I like the conversation that he does have with Anthony about, you hardly knew her. Like and he, I know you believed you loved her, but it's probably for the best. Like you really didn't know who she was, and you were kind of
Yeah,
rushing into this situation. So despite Colin feeling heartbroken, he was ready to move on. And at the end of the season, he does reveal that he's gonna, do more things and travel and see
yeah,
the world, and that Penelope was the one who helped him realize that. So now she's sad because he's leaving. She also feels a bit of guilt for hurting him in that way, even though she kind of felt like it was the best thing to do in that moment.
yeah,
So,
but surely her being secret Lady Whistledown means she
yeah.
has far more strength than she lets on sometimes,
Oh,
because
yes.
surely somebody in that position needs a serious backbone. So
Yeah.
she can't be the spineless, let's cry all the time,
Oh,
little
yes. I mean,
frumpy whoever
yes,
when
we are
she's
definitely
actually Lady Whistledown. She's putting on an act.
yes, and we're going to see some of this transfer from Whistledown to Penelope herself in this 3rd season. I think that's why most people are
Yeah,
so excited. She's gonna get a whole new wardrobe, no more with the bright, ridiculous colors and the childish hair. She's going to be far more mature and stand up for herself in a lot of ways. So, it's going to be exciting for the season 3 for sure.
well,
And
perhaps
then
Nicola Coughlan
Eloise.
will actually be able to play her age and not 15 anymore.
Yes, I think by this 3rd season, she'll probably be like 18, 18 or 19. So
Well,
still not
that's
very
still
close to her age, but at least
no, that's
of
still what, 20 years younger
years.
than she actually
Yes.
is.
Yes, she's like 3 years younger than me. Um, so yeah, and we'll also end things with Eloise. Uh ending up protecting Lady Whistledown. The queen had
Ah,
asked Eloise to help her find Lady Whistledown. When Eloise wasn't getting anywhere with that, she said, "Nope, I'll find my own way to find her." They do find like the printing place where Lady Whistledown goes to print her column, and
yeah,
they set up a trap for her. And Eloise kind of stops the trap and tells Lady Whistledown, "Run, go! It's a trap," kind of situation, and protects her. So we go into this. We're going to go into the 2nd season. Lady Whistledown ending triumphantly. Daphne and
yeah,
the
very much
Duke,
so.
they figure out their whole situation. She comes to the realization what he's doing and why he's doing it, which causes a really terrible contention between the 2 of them because they ultimately do realize they're in love, and they have to get permission from the queen to marry, and it's a whole situation, but they end up marrying, they're happy. She just thinks he can't have children, and so she's like,
Yeah,
"Oh, poor Simon, he would be a great father, he just can't have kids because she has no understanding." But when all is revealed that he's really doing this out of some vendetta, that's what causes strife between the 2 of them,
yeah,
but they ultimately are able to kind of rebound from that when she really learns what he went through. And we didn't talk
yeah.
about Lady Danbury as well. I mean, we can
No,
get into
I did
yeah.
want to bring up
There's so
definitely
much story
wanted to
here,
bring up
sorry.
Lady Danbury. There's an awful lot going on. There's an awful, awful,
Yes,
awful lot going on. The I was just going to bring up the fact that the argument that the pulling out causes,
yes.
or the refusing to become with child causes,
Yes. Yeah.
um, is I, I I don't I never buy it, and I never buy it because I know the story that we're dealing with.
Yeah.
It was never ever going to end with these two falling out and going their separate ways.
Yes, despite how kind of hateful things felt between the 2
I
of them. Yeah.
It doesn't mean to say it wasn't effective at the time when I'm watching it, I mean.
Yeah.
But every time I'm just thinking about it, over the course of the last week, that I have been watching it as time of this recording, I'm thinking, what? Why am I worried? Why am I worried? We know how this is going to end. It's plainly obvious to everybody how this is going to end. This is the most obvious story ever. So why are you getting so annoyed that they're having an argument about, what's going to, why did we see all that before in like episode 2 about his backstory? Because he's eventually going to tell her all of it, isn't he? That's why
Yes.
they've all been not talking to each other. It's so obvious, so obviously it satisfies you when it does come out all that way,
Yes.
which is the point of it. Yes. And absolutely Lady Danbury needs to be mentioned as everybody's favorite auntie, who
Yes.
is the gossipiest of
Oh,
people,
yes, she's such a fun
aside from
character.
Whistledown.
Yes, she's an incredibly fun character, and we do see more of her relationship with the queen as well, which is great, and she was the person who was there for Simon when his father kind of rejected him. She said, "I'm gonna help you with your speech, I'm gonna be a support to you," because she was best friends with his mother. So he does see her as his family, and so when she kind of implores him to do things, he'll kind of maybe listen to her and take her word. And she is the one who ends up kind of giving Daphne the understanding as to why Simon is doing what he's doing. Um, so that ultimately helps lead them to a reconciliation and ultimately them having children of their own and being very
Yes,
happy. So
by season's end, it's all very
yes.
nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
Um, I mean, Lady Danbury is also a great example of the fact that Bridgerton is rammed full of recognizable faces of British television.
Yeah, you were saying that because 'cause I'm
Um,
like, "This is the first time I've seen a lot of these people," so but I'm sure for you, you've seen them all over the place.
and I mean the smaller roles,
Yeah,
like the tertiary characters
yeah.
in this are just these semi-recognizable faces that you've seen in many,
Mhm.
many other things. Like I forget the woman's name, I'm sorry, who does play Lady Danbury, but she was a reasonable regular in David Tennant's Doctor Who era,
Oh,
or
okay.
David Tennant's first Doctor Who era, I should say. I think she was Martha Jones's mother. I think that's who she played. But people like that, that's who's in Bridgerton. It's
Yeah.
nice for me knowing these kind of faces to see them pop up. It's always nice when that kind of stuff happens, I
Yeah.
think. But no, after this season, I know it's a complete story. I know I haven't used my little tag things that I put at the
Yes.
bottom before
We kind
either, but
of bounced around a lot,
we,
and
we've
there was
we've
yeah.
done it.
Yeah,
We've
we've
covered
covered.
what we wanted to.
Yeah.
Um, I like that it's a complete story, yet it still sets
There's
things up.
wiggle room
I
for
think that's
more. Yeah.
it's such a great structure for doing seasons like that, because it doesn't end you on a cliffhanger or any annoying thing like that, or
Yeah.
here's what's coming in the next season. Look at this. It's like it has finished a story. It has
Yeah.
entirely finished a story, and we just want to be back with the characters doing whatever
Yes,
is going
where
to
is this
happen
gonna go
next.
now? Yeah.
The fact that I know it's to do with Anthony is only because you told me it's to do with Anthony.
Yeah.
Would I know what the hell was happening in the next season? No. All I would assume happens is maybe Whistledown gets more I was gonna say more influential, but
Well, it's
maybe
it's it's
takes
gonna be
more
interesting.
risks. Maybe
Yeah, and it's
takes
gonna be
more risk.
interesting looking at what Whistledown does and says now knowing who it is. So we're gonna
Yeah,
get to see more behind the scenes whistle down and how Penelope is able to do what she does. So that's gonna be something
yeah.
that plays into it as well, and we're also gonna develop
And
the things with more characters and
yeah, and obviously how her good friend Eloise is presumably still desperate to find out who Whistledown
yes,
is.
that is definitely gonna play a huge part in this next season, so I'm
Hidden
excited for you
in
to watch
plain sight.
it.
She's right
Yes.
under your nose, Eloise. Hoping you're
Yes.
right.
Yes. So I'm excited for you to jump into season 2 and for us to discuss. I hope you really enjoyed Bridgerton and you're getting the
Yes.
anticipation and excitement for season 3 that everyone has right now because, yes, this is a really fun show.
Well, Lady Letitia Waterton of Magnolia Shire, or
Which
Magnolia
is
Shire.
which is how you do your Bridgerton name. You start with lord or lady, your middle name, the last drink that you drank, add ton at the end of your street name, and add shire to the end of that.
Or
So
you
that's what
just
I
do
do.
what I did and be Lord Whistle.
Although I know what your middle name is, so I could make one for you,
You
but
do, but nobody else does.
I'm gonna pull a whistle down and reveal to everybody.
See, why would you do such a thing? That's not a nice thing to do. Um, don't. I'm the whistle down in this
No,
scenario.
whistle up.
That's how
Sorry.
it
Okay.
works.
Okay.
Whistle up.
Fair
I
point.
can't be whistled down because of copyright infringement, so I have to be the Lord
Oh,
Whistle Up
whistle up.
instead.
Okay. That works.
But yes, there we go. I think for our first, what we're calling it, babbling about
Babbling about
Bridgerton.
Bridgerton.
There we go. I forgot what we're calling it then. We have social media and Patreon and donation links in the description of this episode if you want to support us by doing those things. You can subscribe and ding your notification bell on this channel for all the fun stuff we have going on over here. Or, of course, subscribe on the main It's a Wonderful podcast feed on all major podcast platforms, wherever you do listen to podcasts. We are there bringing all the good stuff every single week on It's a Wonderful Podcast on the shows that we do there. So go and subscribe and get excited about all that stuff. It's fun. But yes, I don't think there's anything else we need to say, really. I mean, I suppose you can just take us out with some sort of hoity-toity upper class early 1800s accent, Janine.
Okay. 3, 2, 1.
See, nobody even speaks that bad in this. It's not that bad, is it? No. Bye.
Bye.